At InDigital, we know that public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
RapidDeploy believes that every public safety agency, regardless of size, should have access to the data they need when it matters most. That's why, since 2016, our mission has been to reduce emergency response times and improve public safety. We are the industry's only integrated emergency response platform. Our web-based cloud platform includes analytics, mapping, dispatch, and mobile apps, purpose-built for 911 in the 21st century. Visit www.rapiddeploy.com to learn how we enable effective, efficient, data-driven emergency response.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital as well as RapidDeploy, and this is going to be a RapidDeploy exclusive episode. Thank you all for joining us. As always, there's a lot going on. We are marching closer and closer to Dare to Be Great 3. That's going to be June 7th through the 10th, and all of the speakers are ready to go. We've got the promos out there going. Those who are sponsoring are getting all of their information in, and once they do, I'll be getting all of their information out there as well, so that you can see the sessions that they're going to be doing for the conference during those few days there for this last Dare to Be Great. And this is going to complete the trilogy of greatness. It has been an awesome experience, and I cannot wait. Also, that means there's a lot of stuff I'm going to have to do to revamp the website to add all the new Dare to Be Great stuff. So make sure to look for that. All of that is coming up. We've got our keynote speakers. I'm very excited for them. Kicking off day one is going to be Congresswoman Norma Torres, and she is going to be talking about all kinds of things. So you don't want to miss that one. That's going to be June. That'll be June 8th. And then on the 9th, it is going to be Sarah Weston, who is the founder of 901 Women, Inc., now a nonprofit organization. Amazing stuff that they're doing. So that's another one you don't want to miss. And then rounding it off on the 10th is going to be Ernie Stevens. He is a retired police officer out of San Antonio PD out of Texas, but he was also part of the subject for a documentary on HBO called Ernie and Joe Crisis Cops. If you have not seen it, make sure to check it out. He's got an excellent session that he's going to be doing called Breaking Down Barriers. So again, it's going to be excellent. Registration is already live, so make sure to go and register for the conference. A big shout out to patrons, as always, for everything. Thank you so very much. I wouldn't be able to do everything that I do if it wasn't for all of you, as well as those who watch, listen, share, and support. So thank you so very much. And my guest today, I'm excited to have on, who's actually a patron as well. So this is very cool too. And his name is Donald Clark. He is systems administrator with Monterey County Emergency Communications out of California. Hey,
Good morning, Ricardo. How are you?
I'm doing all right. And when we first popped on here and you said good morning, I thought it's 3 p.m. And then I thought again, he's out of California. There's a difference.
Well, it's
There's a
actually noon now. It's
yeah.
I kind of lose track of my day. So busy, lose track of what time it is. But I
Right.
appreciate you having me on here, and thank you, RapidDeploy, for recommending asking if we would be interested in doing this. So, thank you.
Yeah, this is going to be good. I'm excited to have you on. And you're right. There are times where you just start working on something, right? I called it being wired in. You start working on something and you're just wired in, focused, and before you know it, it's already lunchtime or it's already time to finish up work and you're like, what happened? Where did the
That's
time
every
go?
day.
Yeah. Your days start meshing together.
Well, they do, especially over the weekend, because we have any issues that we have with our systems. We have CAD paging system. It sends a text page out with the email, and I get those all weekend. And you see, they're like, oh, I got to look at that first thing Monday morning, and so my day starts as I walk in the door. And it just keeps going.
Yeah, exactly. It does not stop. And especially in 911, things just don't stop. They just continue and continue and continue. Do you find though that even now during, at the start of the pandemic and still now as it's, I don't know, in the news, they kind of talk about how it's kind of like a little bit like it's starting to wind down a little bit. But do you find that your days meshing together even more so now during this time that, COVID has been going on?
Yeah, and I mean, even though some of the stats they show that at the beginning of it, some call volume went down, but then it wasn't that long after that it picked back up, and especially with now that we had to take into consideration staff here. If people here started getting sick, what are we going to do? And that's when we kind of had to hurry up and build a backup center, because we truly never had a true backup center within Monterey County. But this brought it to light, and something that we had to get online as quickly as possible in case we had to split the staff up. And we actually have some people working out of there 24/7. So now I'm supporting 2 911 centers, and one's across town and back and forth between the two of them. So it makes for a very busy day.
I can't even imagine
Yeah.
all of that goes into that, because right, there's so many different things that you have to do now. There's restrictions, also the development of different protocols, right, that are going on now to have a backup center in case something happens. And that's one of the biggest things. You try to prepare for as many things as possible, right? But then I guess, have there been times, and this is like, let's just say a year or two ago, where anybody ever thought, what if we ever go through some sort of global pandemic? We should have a backup center, right? Because usually people are thinking that because of weather or anything, but to think about a global pandemic.
Oh, it was something that we never expected. And,
Yeah.
and it's something here in Monterey County that, it's been talked about, because we're a consolidated dispatch center. We dispatch for all the law enforcement and police in the county. I mean, law enforcement and fire in the county, with the exception of CAL FIRE and Highway Patrol. And so there's been talks over the years, but unfortunately it's the availability of funding to get you there. And because we're consolidated, the user agencies we serve pay a majority of our budget. And so if you go back to them, hey, we need another $3 million to help us build a backup center, they start looking at their budgets, what they need. And unfortunately, 911 is kind of one thing that gets put on the back burner when it comes to that stuff. When there's all this grant money, it's like this agency wants this big brand new truck, this agency wants this, and unfortunately 911 kind of gets bumped to the back of the list as far as priorities. Although I wish that there was a bigger priority on 911, because we're the first phone call you make. And the saying goes, what if you called 911 and no one answered the phone? And so that's something that every agency needs to look at, and whether they have the funding for it, they need to figure a way to, even if they have a remote access site, just something off site at a different location, for a good example, the pandemic, to be able to do that.
Can you imagine the amount of chaos that would ensue if people called and there was nobody there to answer the phone?
Oh, I can only imagine.
I
It
mean,
would not be a good news day the next day.
right, right, yeah, it would be. Oh man, I can't even imagine what it would be like. Because I mean, you would, of course, people would be trying to dial some sort of 10-digit line, some number, non-emergency number, to get directly to whatever agency they're trying to get to. But
Right.
if there's not anybody there as well to answer, I don't know. It's
Yep.
mind blowing.
Yeah, no, it is, and that's the world we live in. We have to think about that and do everything we can to make sure that those lines get in there, whether it's the, the 911 lines or the non-emergency lines, and just because they come in a different route. It's not through our AT&T wire line. They come in through a different way on non-emergency, but you have to be there, and the phones have to be working. I mean, we've had situations where a car accident down the street will take out, the lines leading in the building. And unfortunately, that was like the single point of failure. But you don't think about that. Well, if someone took that one pole out, well, it has happened here.
Man, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna get into some of that here in a moment, because those are other things that people don't think about. If there's that line, well, and of course also because they don't know how it works.
Correct.
People are, especially now, are always thinking that things are always working, things are always up, and when they're down, there's got to be a backup somewhere. But it's not always like that. I mean, there are still some areas here in this great country of ours that don't have 911. It's still like a 10-digit line that they have to call.
Exactly.
And
it depends on the size of the agency whether a surrounding agency can assist you. It's like I have the capability back in our server room. I can go and throw one of 3 switches and pull different PSAPs 911 calls into our center. But there's not an agency that is large enough to go in their back room and pull all of our lines into their center. There's nobody around us of that size that can handle the call volume.
oh man, yeah. Okay, hold on. Before we get into your background story, I want to stay on this a little bit, because that's so. If you can explain for those who are, because there's a big chunk that listen and watch this are also from the public. So when you're talking about those other agencies that might not be able to handle your traffic, how would that happen? This would be, let's say, like a major disaster, a big accident, or weather, or something where you're unable to answer phone calls, and they would end up going to the next dispatch center, right? Or how would you explain that for those who are not really sure how the system works?
Well, AT&T in California here, I mean, you make a phone call, and even if they notice that your lines are down before you really notice they're down, they have the ability to reroute all your 911 trunks to a surrounding jurisdiction. And then you get into the issue with, does that surrounding jurisdiction know our jurisdiction, know our geography, and what agency we dispatch for? And unless they, live in the area, they're not really going to know it. And unfortunately, there's nobody surrounding us that can handle not just the call volume, but really knows the geography here. We've had where we had one trunk go down and we didn't know it was down, and AT&T routed for us without us even knowing it was going to a neighboring county. And that trunk line only would get maybe a few calls on it in a 24-hour period. And that agency wasn't expecting it. I think they took 2 or 3 calls overnight, and they were upset. They called, when you get this fixed, you can't keep taking your calls. And it was only 3. And so it was kind of, frustrating that, well, when we looked in it, you only had 3 calls. But they were able to then either route them through a 7-digit, 10-digit number to us, or go up on a radio frequency and give us the information. And so I just wish that there was more collaboration amongst PSAPs to share each other's jurisdictions, geography, everything. And then you start running into your mapping issues on CAD. If you, have one main street in your jurisdiction, but then you bring in that agency's geography in there, and then next thing you know, you have 15 different main streets, and you go to enter a call, and all it takes you selecting that wrong location, and it's disappears from your screen, and you put it in for another county when it needs to be within your county. And so that's another challenge too.
Yeah. So for those who are watching, yeah, if there is a time where an agency is overloaded with calls that are coming in, they end up flowing into the next one, because someone has got to be able to answer that line. And one of the coolest things that I saw, and I'm sure there's a lot of other, dispatch centers that do this as well, but in Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula, in the UP, I was at an agency where I was training dispatchers and call takers on how to use their backup phone system as well as their text for 911 platform. Well, while I was there, I was just kind of observing what they were doing before we got into the training room and such. And there was a call that had come in. It was in a different jurisdiction, and they took the information and created a call for it in their system, and then transferred them over. So the entire Upper Peninsula has the same CAD system. And
Wow.
so they were able to actually put in all that information for them and send it off, and they would have it already. So they transfer the call, but they already had the information on the computer
Mhm.
already done for them. And I when they got off the phone, I said, "Wait a minute." And then I started,
Yeah.
asking questions. They're like, "Yeah, that's how we do it up here." I was like, that is cool.
And,
That
and
is a
it's
cool
nice
way
when
to
you,
do it.
it is when you have the CAD to CAD link, especially if you have a big area like you said in Michigan, that whole upper northern Michigan, they're all running off the same CAD system. It makes it easier to tie them together. When
Mhm.
you're dealing with 15 different CAD systems, and then you got to get everybody's API to be able to configure the CAD to CAD link to be able to work with it. And there's cost of the interfaces are not cheap, and so it's and like right now we're trying to put something together with Cal Fire locally here so that we have CAD to CAD, and which would help out a lot, but at the same time, it's kind of slow going because Cal Fire, got to make sure they secure funding for it, and they're statewide, so they have to bring it to the state level, which kind of slows things down. And same with here in Monterey County, we can't just write a blank check. Okay, let's just do it and do it.
Right.
It costs money, and that money has to come from somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Now, let's go back in time a little bit,
All right.
and let's learn a little bit more about you. How did you get started in public safety to begin with? Do you come from a public safety background, or it was just like an interest and you jumped in? How did that work for you?
Well, I was a volunteer firefighter with one of our local fire districts here in Monterey County,
Mhm.
and as back in the day when the emergency communications here, they supplemented their fire dispatch with off-duty firefighters. It was a way to bring some people in to help, do this, part-time, do staffing, and it worked great during the winter months and everything. And the chief came and said, "Hey, over here at Firecom Monterey County, they're looking to bring on firefighters to help dispatch." And oh, that'd be interesting, just a little bit of extra pocket money, whatever. So I, stepped up, said, I'll do it. I applied and got hired. I came in here and I never looked back. I love the job. I think it's great. Did I want to be a firefighter? Sure. But that, it's like, back in the day, getting into law enforcement or the fire service, it was very hard to break that barrier and get in. And I remember when I applied for LA City Fire, they were hiring 250 firefighters, and there was 30,000 people that took the test. And so it's just not like you only have
Whoa.
500 people you're going up against. You're talking 30,000 people, and so that's how you get to look at different options. Which way you want to go. But once I started dispatching and realized that I enjoyed doing it, I never looked back and stayed with the dispatching. And that was back in 1999, and so I've been here since then.
Wow. There's a lot of people that I've spoken to where they have said, I thought, I wanted to get into, law enforcement or fire or whichever discipline in public safety. And I thought going into, dispatch would be a good start to learn from this side. And once I was in there, though, I caught the bug and I realized this was what I wanted to do. So for you to say that as well, that continues, but also are you able to pinpoint, like, if you think back on it, was there a point, was there a call, was there a moment in training, was there something that happened that is what solidified the fact that this is the right job for me, like I made the right choice? Did anything happen, or did it just, through some of the calls you took,
Well, I think it
for you?
was. I think it was initially when I started my training down here. I was training at nights because I had a full-time job in the corporate world, and I worked from home. And, you know, it's one of those things, I was able to get my full-time job done in a couple, 3 hours in a day. And as long as I was not available to take calls from my customers and everything, and my company was good with it. And so I was able to do that. And I was training at night. And I think it was my, one of the first times I dispatched a structure fire. And it was back in the day, we had the old Motorola tower sitting on the dispatch console. It's not computerized. And, not saying my first one I didn't mess up, because my trainer went down the hall and a structure fire popped up, and I'm like, oh, okay, all these equipment. I started hitting page tones for each piece of equipment instead of an all call. And she came walking back in the room, and you got 10 different tones going off, and she about lost her mind. And, but it was the, I guess, the increased radio traffic and the units going around, getting on scene, asking for additional resources that really solidified that, you know, this is the job for me. And I never looked back after that.
Wow. What was that? I guess what was, so as you're talking about training and that little bit that happened there, what was the training like for you? Because you were wanting to get into one space, you end up going into dispatch, and you really enjoyed it. But building up to that point where you enjoyed it, unless it was right off the bat in training, like, was it ever overwhelming at all? Was there ever a point where, you know, you start this training and you're thinking, oh, this is a little different than I thought?
Yeah, it was right after, because, you know, because being a volunteer firefighter, and I got hired as a part-time fire dispatcher, that the trainers, they were great. I didn't have any issues with the training side of it, other than once you got to a certain level and you're working on your own overnight shift, and then some people realize, oh wait, you're part-time, you're taking away some of my overtime here, you know. That was the unfortunate part. And especially, you know, we had some people that felt, because it was the fire side of the house was new. A lot of dispatchers used to do fire and law all at the same time, and they'd tell you to stand by, I'm on fire, and so on. So they split that out, and you had the fire side and the law side. And so the training, to me, it was not that hard at all. I mean, especially on, you know, working just fire, you just got to understand what all the jurisdictions are and what their geography was and what they send to what type of response. And it just clicked in my head, and I was able to retain that. And so I think it was at that point that, you know, this is what I want to do. And my brother, he retired 30 years, San Diego PD. And I guess when right out of high school, he joined the Navy. I wanted to top him. I joined the Marine Corps. And so afterwards, he was a police officer. Oh, I'm going to be a firefighter. And then once I got into dispatch, you know, I'm like, well, hey, I'm dispatching now. And he's just like, oh, you're still not out in the field. I'm like, no, but we could tell you where to go.
Yeah. But, you know, I think it's a whole different level almost, because, you know, you've got you know, say your brother and others who are out in the field, they're face to face, and they're handling things a certain way, right? But when you're on the phone, it's a whole different game, because you're listening to everything and piecing it together in your brain to get it out there to those who are heading there, so they know exactly what they're getting into. Of course, with fire, you know, you've got a structure that's going or whatever, but there are also little pieces to that where when you're on the phone with somebody, you know, you're listening to everything that's going on, you know, in that environment. Like there could be, you know, crackles or popping, anything else that's back in that environment that you're hearing, that you can radio over to them that will assist them. But again, you're piecing it all together and trying to get them out. If the safest way is possible to get them out of the house as well, if they're on their phone and they're, you know, going out or whichever, it's a whole different game.
Oh, correct. And there's an added level that gets added in there when, you know, 99% of the time law enforcement is going to arrive on scene before a fire engine will. And, you know, then you see in the CAD gets updated that the officer's going inside a residence. Now you got to look at that, and you know, hot tone, you got to let your units know, hey, be advised, PD's making entry. And you know that they don't have on the protective equipment that the firefighters have. And, you know, then there's that heightened level of anxiety, I guess, on that point, because you're worried about, you know, the officer, you know, getting hurt and relaying that to all the units down, whether you know, reported power lines down associated with the fire. Now you got to make sure every unit en route acknowledge that life hazard. There's power lines down, because you don't want to, someone stepping off an engine and stepping on a power line right there next to them. And so you got to get all that and relay everything you can.
Man, I know I've said it already a bunch of times, but there are so many things, so many aspects of, emergencies that come in. And also when you have the one that you're working, 911 doesn't stop. There are more that's going on at the same time. And you get to juggle all of that.
Correct. And I mean, I've heard where, when you're call taking, you're also working dispatch here at center. I mean, all of our dispatchers are answering the phone as well. Sure, we have, a few call takers. That's what their job is for the night. But the calls, they'll, ring over into another queue. You're answering the phone, and you might take that structure fire or that shooting that you're going to be the dispatcher dispatching it. And so you have to do them both at the same time. And then there gets to the point where you're keying up on the radio, and if you're wearing two headsets, the caller can hear what you're doing, and they start, I'm sorry, what? And you're like, oh, hold on, I'm talking to fire units, and so it can complicate it. And, but it is, you're from answering a 911 call, dispatching your own call. It's busy, and you got to be able to do them both.
Yeah, it's multitasking to the max. Like, there's so much multitasking that goes on. And so I remember in dispatch, when I had my headset on, when it would work, I had my actual headset on, whenever I would key up to answer fire or EMS while I'm on a call, it would mute the caller, so they wouldn't be able to hear me talking. But if it wasn't working for whatever reason, and I had, my phone tucked between my right shoulder and my ear, that would be the same way. I would say, okay, ma'am, hold on just 1 second. I just got to answer them on the radio really quick. And then I would answer, or I would have to put them on, try to mute as fast as I could to be able to answer, especially if it had to do with the call that I'm on at the time, because they don't need to hear everything, right, that's going on. Especially
they don't.
Right, especially if EMS or fire or whichever is delayed by something. If there's something that they say over the radio, because then that also adds a whole other level of that anxiety as well. Because if the caller hears that they're delayed, even if it's for not even their call, if they hear that, the tone in their voice is going to change, and you might kind of lose them there for a moment. No,
it does. You'll be taking a 911 call not associated with anything what you're dispatching on. And, you go into dispatch, send units out, and the caller hears that. You're like, there's not a medical here. My car's not on fire. And you're like, no, I'm sending them someplace else. 1 moment.
Yeah.
I can't, I've never been able to use the headset, holding between my shoulder and my ear while I've got another headset on. So I choose to do the dual headset. And back in the day, we had to, phone radio integration where you key up, it mutes the caller from hearing what you're saying. And then as time goes on, the new radio system we have, it is not capable of integrating into the phone system we had at the time. Now that we have a new phone system, the potential there, we just have to follow through with it and get that set up. And then there's going to be some dispatchers that still prefer to have that separated. I like to wear a dual headset.
Oh, man. Okay, hold on here then. I'm trying to picture this. So with the dual headset, you would have, let's just say, like 2 separate traffics going on at one time in either ear?
Well, no, you have phone in one ear and radio in the other.
Oh, okay.
You got 2 different mics right there next to your mouth.
Yeah.
One's for the phone, one's for the radio. But regardless of, fortunately, you'd be talking to caller, the radio doesn't know. But as soon as you key up talking on the radio, the caller's hearing what you're saying. And until we get that integration back in here, it's just something that you have to deal with right now, unless you had the separate phone and people are like, hold on a minute, and they have to, like mute it. And it's just one of those things that I just keep going, because I think the workflow is better for me, because I still dispatch out on the floor at night on overtime. And so I did give up dispatch completely once I got my new job. So, and I enjoy doing it.
That's awesome. How many people work at a time on the floor? And then what are the hours like? Is it 8s or 12s?
We work, let's see, we're doing 3 12s in a 4-hour shift in a week. And so there's, depending on time of day, but we could have up to 16 people out there on the floor at a time. And then as day goes on, started at 10 p.m., we start losing bodies as time go on until you get to midnight. That's when you don't have anybody dedicated to phones. It's all radio people in the room. In some of the channels, like the Sheriff's Department, they lose their second dispatcher that they had during the day up until midnight. And then they don't come back until, depending on time, either 6 in the morning or 8 in the morning. And we have consolidated some channels over the years, which also freed up some dispatchers and allowed us to bring down overtime. Now that the user agencies are using the same talk group, but it was new for them because they're not used to hearing the city next to them on their channel, and now they're hearing them, and it's just one of those things to run more efficiently. Every agency needs to look at that at one point. Hey, can we consolidate these 2 radio channels? Because is there a need to have a body for an agency that only has 3 units on duty at a time? Do you need a dispatcher dedicated to that? And I think most of the time you find out, no, adding that to another dispatcher, is reasonable.
Are you broken up into different sections there on the floor, or are you all together? I mean, if you stood up from your console, what do you see? Like, do you see everyone like a cube farm almost with consoles? Like a hive?
We have 24 dispatch consoles out on the dispatch floor. And so, if you stood up, you could see the entire room. And the fire is pretty much the one that is dedicated to sit where they're located at. But law enforcement and call takers, they could pretty much move around the room. We prefer that they're in the same positions all the time. That way, when you're sending a message to somebody, hey, I need to send a message to, Salinas PD, you just boom, send a message to that console. Even though there's other commands you could use, it'll get to them no matter where they're at. But right off the top of your head where they're sitting. But sometimes if they get moved around, and then you'll send a message like, I'm working Monterey tonight. Like, oh, sorry.
Do you guys have those do you have the lights, the light poles, and like if there's a bunch of law enforcement calls or whichever calls that are coming in, they start blinking and all?
Yeah, we have with our the Viper phone system, we have the light poles that have the 4 different colors on it. As soon as you answer the line, it turns red. Okay, they're on the phone. If it's green, you're waiting for a phone call to come in. You're available for a phone call. If you're running down the hall, hit the button, turn it orange. They know you're not sitting there and that you're up. And so that's how it's easy way without having to go and look at CAD. You're like, I need to run on the hall. You just look up. There's 3 lights on. I gotta wait a minute until one of those orange lights goes off, and then I can run down the hall. Or you can look in CAD and see if they're down the hall.
I can see where all of that definitely helps. And even though the center that I was working at, the last one, was a small one, it would have been cool to have that, to be able to just see, who's on a call sometimes and who's not. But I feel like being on the radio, though, if I see a bunch of those lights that there's calls, I'm like, oh man, something's going down. It's about to go down right now. Like that would add a little more. Like, all right, the adrenaline starts pumping even more. Like, I see the lights going. Like, here we go.
Oh yeah, especially you can hear it in the room, even though there's 24 counts. So they could be politics across the room. And as soon as you hear, who's been shot,
right?
Like, okay, somebody's getting a shooting here, and then you're trying to look and say, oh, okay, it's a Salinas number, so it's going to be whoever's working that sector for Salinas PD and as fire as well, because it's coming to both of you.
Yep.
And so, but you're able to anticipate that. Sometimes you're like, oh yeah, I hope it's for you and not me.
Right.
Yeah.
Depending on the area and stuff, because in the center that I worked, so you said 16 are usually out on the floor, right? So for us, it was 3. It was 3. Yeah. 3 was the minimum for our county, and 4 over the weekend, sometimes 5 if there was bad weather. But just having 3 of us in there, it was one call taker, it was backup call taker, as well as main radios, law enforcement radio, and then the law enforcement person. But if you're answering the phone, if you're the call taker, because we did both. So you're answering calls, but you're also toning out for fire or EMS and running the radio for all of that all at one time. And if you're on radio and you're just doing law enforcement radio, all you would have to do is, of course, like you said, either hear someone say who's been shot, or if there's nobody else that's talking and the call taker is just listening to what's going on, if you hear that hard and fast typing, there's another indication that shit's going down.
Yeah. And you're sitting there waiting, you can hear it going on. You're like, okay, where's my call? Where's my call? And you're like, you know, you want to send them, hey, you got to enter the call here.
Well, yeah. That's the other thing. When you're on the other side, you're waiting for it and you're like, come on. And sometimes, you know, depending on what it is that's going on, you know, you would just, at least this is the way we would do it. We would do it as an unknown situation. You know, we would at least have the location, and we would just tone out unknown situation going on at, you know, whatever location.
Right.
Information to follow, and then as it's finally getting in there, then, you know, we start giving it out over the radio. But man, I'm getting all jumpy just flashing back.
No, it's a fun job, and you know, you gotta really enjoy the job. You gotta, you know, want to do the job. I mean, we you know, like every agency across the country, that staffing's an issue for them right now, and it's not that you can't find people to apply. You know, everybody's getting plenty of applicants. It's finding the applicants that can do the job. I mean, we've had where they finished the in-house academy and are getting ready to start the training on the floor. And we've, you know, recently we had the day of the graduation from the academy, we had somebody quit. They didn't, you know, oh, it's not for me. And it was right at graduation. You're like, wait a minute, you really haven't hit the floor yet. Don't quit yet. You know?
Yeah.
And so, but you know, it's one of those jobs that, you know, if you know, if you know this is not for you, it's better that, you know, you realize that up front instead of, you know, I mean, if you want to stick with it and plug it out and, you know, and try and get through it. Some people just can't handle the, and drama might be the wrong word to use, but hearing, you know, everybody's, you know, life and death emergency day in and day out, call after call.
Right.
It's not meant for everybody. And where we've had people in training, just, you know, luckily they were in training and they had a training officer with them where they, you know, just take that. I can't do this. I cannot listen to this every day and have to go home with this on my mind every day. You know, and that's the unfortunate part, you know, about being a dispatcher. And the bigger part is you don't get closure. You don't know what happened at the end of the call, where officers in the field, yes, we might not be standing there and getting blood on our boots, but they're also not hearing the frantic screams and everything on the phone that everybody else is taking when it's getting dispatched. And that's the aspect for dispatchers that they have to struggle with and be able to deal with, because you don't get closure. You never know what the outcome of it is. And, you know, unless it's 3 years later, you see it on news, a court case, like, oh, I took the 911 call for that. And then it comes back to you. But unfortunately, you know, it's an open-ended book for every call that you take. Unless you have some officers will get back to you and let you know, hey, I just wanted to, you know, tell you, hey, this is what happened, you know. And you'll have some officers do it, or some, you know, firefighters will call you up, say, hey, I want to let you know that, you know, that person, you know, they're at the hospital, but, you know, they're going to be okay. And so, which is nice to hear.
That was always good. That was one of the best things, you know, being in dispatch that I remember as well, is that, you know, there were some out in the field that did get it. You know, they understood that, you know, that same thing, that we don't get that closure, and they would call up and say, hey, were you the one who took this call? And say, yeah, I did. And, well, I just want to let you know, you know, and then they would let us know. And man, that was always a huge relief to be able to get that information, even if it was later on in the day at the end of the shift, even if it was like a day later or something, just to know what happened was a big, you know, weight lifted off the shoulders.
Oh, it was. And for, you know, how many years they had to, you know, critical incident debriefing that, you know, every agency would have. And, you know, dispatch was kind of left out of that for, you know, years. And then finally, you know, someone said, hey, wait a minute, you know, they were right there along with us on the radio, and they had to take the calls and everything. And I'm not sure how it started, but then they started inviting dispatch. So every time there's a critical incident debriefing, they always get a hold of dispatch. Hey, just letting you know, we're going to have this on this date at this time. Whoever's working the call, whether it's the dispatch or the call taker, you know, if they feel they need to go, you know, they're welcome to join us, which is nice. But, you know, some agencies, like on the fire departments, they will take them out of service immediately after call and go to a debriefing. And that puts in your head, oh, this must have been really bad call, because, they're not going back online for a couple hours, and it just, you have to tuck that in the back of your brain onto the next call. And then you go home and you think about that call for the next few days. What happened?
Right.
That's the part about being a dispatcher that, is not the glamour of being a dispatcher.
Yeah, for sure, man. Do you recall any of your earlier calls, or like some of the calls that have stuck with you? You said that you still do you're still dispatching and everything part-time, but earlier on in your career, like are there any of those that you remember that just from the beginning?
I'd say that there's probably 3 calls that really stand out for me, and one of them was a vehicle accident where I didn't take the first 911 call, but we dispatched the fire department out to a unknown injury accident. They got on scene, they couldn't find anything, and then the second 911 call came in. I got that one, and it was obvious within 5 minutes. And of course, it went to back before we were able to get the cellular phone calls dwindled, kind of pointed to the correct PSAP. Everything went to high patrol, and so they transferred us over to call. And after they get done interrogating and trying to locate it, and it was obvious we were dealing with the people that were involved in this accident, that they had a head injury. Both parties in the vehicle had an injury, because they started the story off at the beginning of their night and ran through every area they were going to, and it pretty much encompassed every area in the Salinas Valley, all the different fire districts and fire departments. And it's back in the day technology. We were getting a phase 1 hit. You had no idea where they're at. And so only thing we did, and I was a supervisor that night, and I said, told the other fire dispatcher I was working with, hey, send Salinas out, have them check all the county areas outside their district. And then we went through 6 different fire departments and sent them out on the road checking all the areas, and nobody found anything. And the person was I was still on the phone with them, and they couldn't give any better location, and the high patrol was still on the phone with me. And you could tell that the people were hurt pretty bad, and their phone was dying. And I remember telling her, I said, I know you're hurt, but I need you to crawl out of that vehicle, and we got to get you up to a roadway, because we cannot locate where you're at. We've got everybody out looking for you. We had them, running sirens, and they couldn't hear anything. And so as soon as I said, I know you're hurt and you got to get out of that vehicle, and I could hear the high patrol dispatcher, she gasped like, oh, what are you doing? You never tell them to move. But it was one of those things that if you didn't, what was going to be the outcome? Or were we going to find them the next day, and they were not going to be alive? And she made it out of the vehicle, and she was screaming in pain all the time. And it was obvious she had to climb up the road. It's about a 12-foot drop. She made up the road, and I told her, okay, stay off to the side of the road. Don't sit in the road. And the next car, I need you to wave your arms. And her phone went dead. And tried to call back, went right to voicemail. And it was about 2.5 hours later, someone driving on that road, at 3 o'clock in the morning, called in, hey, I was driving. I found this woman sitting on the road, waving her hands, everything. I don't know what's going on. And we do at that point, that's going to be the call. And it was the only road that we didn't check. And then we ended up, fire department got on scene. We ended up launching 2 helicopters due to their injuries, and had to fly them out to trauma centers, and spoke to the fire chief after the call was over. And he said, if she wasn't on the side of the road, we would have found them the next morning dead. They would not have survived their injuries nor the cold weather, because the car was upside down in trees, 12 to 15 feet down in a ravine that nobody would have, people were driving by, all would never have seen it. And so it was one of those things that, you think about, before this happened, okay, am I going to get in trouble? I just told somebody with an injury to, start crawling around. Is it going to make the injury worse? But then you're like, it's one of the things you had to do it. And right. So, and both people survived, and they were both late teens. They were, teenagers. They hadn't graduated high school yet or anything yet, but they were en route to a party. And when this happened, and they were completely, 30, 40 miles from where they initially started at, where their story started at. And that's how we knew, because they were going, oh, I went this city, that city, that city. and you're like, oh, great, they could be anywhere in the county area in the Salinas Valley, and then we have county area that's out on the peninsula of the county, but they didn't mention anything of that, so we were able to isolate at least down to the Salinas Valley. But it's a huge geography here, and so, and luckily we were able to find them. At least, her sitting on the side of the road, helped to the outcome to call, because it would have been tragic if we didn't. And so that one, sticks out in my head, that because I was on the phone for an hour and a half with them, trying to find out where they're at, while we're sending all the fire departments out looking for them, and it was that one road that was not checked, and it was way out in the county area, and the fire department thought they went up and down all the back roads, but it was one that was missed. Nothing on them. I mean, you can't expect to be able to cover every square mile of your district when you're out there looking for something that you have no idea what you're looking for, and especially when it's concealed by trees down in a ravine.
Jeez. What? Oh man. Okay, so I guess, what was that like? Okay, so you were on the phone for that long, but then the phone dies. I mean, I think my jaw would drop, and I would probably like, WTF? Like, what?
Yeah.
All that time. What was that like for you then?
Oh, it was very frustrating, because you're like, wow, I lost connection. It's not like there was another phone I could call to get a hold of them. And, the fact that, back then with the technology was out there, you're getting a phase 1 hit, you're getting an address off a cell phone tower, that is 15, 20 miles away in that area of the county. They could have been anywhere. And it was frustrating, but now that, like with RapidDeploy, the technology they have, I mean, we're getting responses back from RapidDeploy, because we've got our anti-alley feed going into that CAD at the same time it's dumping the RapidDeploy, and we're getting their phase 2 hit. We're getting it, 30 seconds before a cell provider can even provide us with a first round of a phase 2, and they put it right on the head every time. I mean, there's none. Oh, it's 90% accurate within 5,000 meters. This puts it right on top of them. If that technology was available back then, it wouldn't have been an issue, because you could see it right on your screen. Oh, no, I'm showing you here. You'd have known right where to go, and you get people right away. So it was frustrating knowing that even with the technology was there, it was just frustrating. Like with Nathan Lee with the December Lee Foundation, like he said that, because I remember when I met him at a Catalina conference many years ago, he was a guest speaker, and he's talking about how he could go to, and I think he was working part-time at Best Buy or whatever. He can buy a GPS unit, put it in his fishing boat, go out fishing 25 miles off the coast, and bring in fish all day long, mark that GPS coordinate, go home next day, push a button, it'll take him right back to where he was. But yet, when it comes to 911, we didn't have that technology yet. But for fishing, it's there. And that's the frustration that the cellular providers, and to me, it's not necessarily can they provide that, or is it that they don't want to upset their customer base that, like Big Brother's watching, we're going to report your locations, but then you have RapidDeploy, Rapid SOS come along, and where instead of working with the Verizon's, AT&T, they went directly to the manufacturer's cell phone and got this integrated prior to producing the cell phone, to where that technology is built into the cell phone. You can't turn it off. And that was a game changer in 911 as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's helped here. I mean, where, you're able to give officers real time where it's pinging at, and where officers, like, it's instead of just, oh, it's accurate within 1,000 meters. That could be anywhere in the area, but you tell the officers there, and it's helped, instance here where a text to 911, where they're en route back to that same house where the person's making threats over text to 911. And then you run that phone number through that. Well, wait a minute. Hey, let the officers know he's not at the house. He's quarter way down the street on the other side of his bush lines where it's tagging him, and where officers are able to stop before they come into the street and come around from the back. And sure enough, there he was hiding behind bushes, and he was threatening to shoot the officers, and then, foot pursuit ensued. But it was that technology that prevents that, from happening today, which, man, I think, you couldn't. You can't ask for anything better to be able to pinpoint where someone's at.
I think that it also, kind of thinking back, to those times before this technology, and if that technology was back during that time, for me specifically, I feel like, it would have relieved a lot of frustrations and stress
Oh, it
when
would. I,
when trying to find people, especially. So we have a huge game area where I used to dispatch at, and we would get people who would go in there and hike, and they would get lost, and they would
Mhm.
call, and then we would have to figure out different ways. You'd have to think outside of the box, which is
Yeah.
what made it fun as well, because you're trying to figure out exactly how to get this person help, but in a different way, because now it's almost getting dark. The good thing though is that the officers that are going that way, you can have them turn on their lights, their sirens, and
Mhm.
have the person look for that and go in that direction. And so there was all of that, but with this added technology, it makes it so much easier. Now for you, you've worked all this time in dispatch and everything, but in the position that you work now, in some of these situations, and as well as bringing, technology in, was this inspiration to kind of move into more of a tech position? Or, I mean, have you always had um, this love for technology and, 911 as well? I guess, what was some inspiration to switching over to be a systems administrator?
Well, I'd say how I got into that area. I mean, I've always loved technology.
Mhm.
I'm the type of guy that, every electronic gadget I can have, oh yeah, I got to get that. It's something new. But we had, with our previous CAD system, what we have now, I think we had it for 15 years, and there were certain areas where it just wasn't performing right and recommending the correct units the way the fire departments wanted it. And so one day I just sat there, I started reading through the admin manuals, going through the programming of how the fire side of it and law side of it worked, and reading through it. And I found an area where, like, hey, wait a minute, this is addressing that area where we can't get it. And so I went to my supervisor at the time, said, hey, been reading up a lot on this. I said, I don't have access to be able to get into that side of CAD to program, but with your permission, I'd like to go in there and just make one change, and I'll do screenshots and everything. That way, if it doesn't work, we can switch it right back. But I think that we could resolve this problem that we complaining for years and we couldn't make work. I think I could resolve that in a few minutes. And she got permission for me to do that, and went in and made a change, and it started doing what we wanted to do, what the fire department wanted to do. And they were ecstatic. I was ecstatic. I was able to figure that out. And then at that point, because we had someone else doing the position, I'm not saying they didn't know what they were doing, but I don't know if they were taking the steps and really thinking past outside the box to figure out, how can I make this work for us, instead of saying, hey, that's just the way it works, that's the way it is. And then they brought to me a couple of other issues that never functioned right, and I was able to read up on those, figure it out, and got them to work the way that we wanted to work. And at that point, that responsibility was given over to me as far as all the CAD programming. And and I was a supervisor on the floor dispatching, and at the same time I'm doing the CAD admin. And it wasn't until when we went to a new RFP that they asked, well, who's your CAD admin? And I was in the meeting. They're like, well, he is. And we're like, well, I thought you said he's a shift supervisor. Well, he is. And they're like, no, you need to dedicate somebody full time to that position. And then that's when the department realized the need for it. And the company helped us write the RFP was correct, because especially with the newer CADs, they're all Windows based. All the programming's changed the way it operates. And I'm still in there messing with CAD today, trying to get things ready, especially when you do upgrades. It might break something here, and you got to figure out, okay, how do we fix that? How do we get it running again? And so, and that's how I got into it. And then when the county opened up that position, I applied for it, and and it was one of those things. I don't want to say, oh, I was just a sure thing, but I applied for it, and I interviewed against 12 other people within the county that didn't work for our department, but they were in IT roles within other departments, and I had to go up against them. And luckily I did well enough where I was selected for the position. And so, and from that point on, it's one of those things that I love this side of it as well as dispatch side of it. I love technology. but there's that fine line of bringing too much technology into a comm center.
Right.
It's like when you're getting a new CAD, dispatchers don't like change. Keep throwing technology on top of it with them. They don't like that even more.
Well, it sounds like you were able to, even though there were other candidates there, I mean, you had the experience on both sides there as well. You were able to, bridge that gap between, the 911 side and the technology side. And because you have that experience, you can use those real world scenarios to put into a lot of this technology that's coming in, and really play on that. And looking at now, we kind of talked about it early on in the beginning, but now here towards the end, we're talking about current times and the pandemic, COVID-19, all of this impact, and thinking about what you're going to have to do if something goes down, if you have to shut the center down, or if you have to split up. You got two different crews, you have to split them up to make sure you're able to social distance the best way possible, because 911 cannot stop. These calls continue to come in. So what goes into creating this backup center? Because you've got multiple consoles, right? And there's just so much that goes into it for you in your role. I mean, dude, that's got to be a lot of pressure as well.
It was when when COVID hit and the director came to me and said, "Hey, we need to figure out a way to be able to dispatch from their location." And I'm like, "Well, how far do you want to go? How many millions of dollars do we have to play with?" And it's mostly, we don't have millions. Let's just say, if I was able to get you 75,000, could we do it? And I'm like, "Well, yeah, we could get your remote access site." And so what we did, I stepped up from what we did, like when the U.S. Open, because we got championship golf courses here in Pebble Beach. Mm-hmm. And when the U.S. Open came here, we are there 24/7 during the whole event. We have two dispatchers working, but we had the time to put in dedicated, switched Ethernet from AT&T fiber over there, to where I was able to build a dispatch center there, where we had our full-blown radio system like we do here, our phones in CAD, just like when you got there, you had 5 monitors that you were working on, just like if you were here. And so we took the lessons we learned from over there and implemented it here in the county, where we were able to move it to another building. I set up 12 different dispatch consoles over there, and it works well. I mean, there are some areas that I'm trying to strengthen as far as connectivity. I want to have more robust connectivity. But right now, on the ambulance side of the house, we have, because the contracted ambulance provider is contracted to work out of our 911 center. And so what we did is, during the COVID thing, and they even want to do it, once we got that up and running over there, the CAD, the phone system, the radio, they wanted to go work over there. And so they're actually working out there 24/7. And so that's how I'm supporting both centers right now. And it's worked out very well. A couple connection issues here and there that we're working on. And we, I put in a switch, and we have the county radio system going into a single switch, the CAD system, and the phone system that's going in through the switch. We to certain IP addresses back out on the phone through Comcast back into our Viper phone system. And we have Open VPN running, so it's secure connection. But you will have an issue if Comcast is having a maintenance window going on. You might lose phones. So we had to then set up desk phones, just in case they lost that connection to the main phone system. We're able to still transfer calls for EMD to a desk phone that they are able to still use. And it's worked out very well. And they've been over there, 5-6 months now. And they actually like it over there. I mean, they don't have the neat consoles that raise up and down like here. But you go over there, and when, because I go over there to do weekly system reboots on everything over there, and they're like, "Hey, when are we gonna get these nice consoles that you have over there?" Like, don't know, but it'd be nice to have them. I agree, but it's all based on funding. But my director, I mean, for about 75,000, we were able to get a remote access site up and running. And when I mean remote, the phone's more remote, but the CAD connections direct through our county network. Back there, we just opened up the right firewall, right ports to get it to work over there. Same with the radio system. And so we're running back on the county network that was already there just by having a switch in there and just working with our networks team to configure the switch to have it work for us. And so it was worked out very well. I mean, it's not true redundancy. Yeah, we don't have the same servers over there, A and B site. So if this building went dark, yes, it would take that down. But it gives you the option to split staffing up if you needed to, and have day shift over there, night shift here. It allows you the flexibility to do that. And
that's awesome, man.
Yeah, and it's worked out very well. And we have the connection to the state, during license plates and all that over there, so it's worked out very well.
As we go into the wrap up of this episode, which it's been awesome to have you on here. I can't believe we're already going on an hour. It doesn't even feel like we've been talking that long. But as we go into the wrap up of this, as we're talking about technology, one, how has technology changed since you started in '99? And two, for those who might be nervous about bringing in new technology, what's your advice to them to, embrace that technology?
Well, I think the way technology has changed. I mean, cell phones they're getting more accurate with the locations of it, but RapidDeploy. I mean, they hit a home run where they're giving us information to us way before cell phone companies are, and you're able to pinpoint it right there on the map, like right now. And if they're driving a car and it's dropping a flag every 6 seconds, and you can watch them driving down the highway and actually track where they're going. So it makes it easier to locate. I think that was the single technology change in the 911 industry that it changed the game. Just like NG 911. However, we're, California, we're not on that yet. When it's here, I mean, we have the equipment in our back room, but it's not been tested here in Monterey County. I know there's a test in California in another county. I don't have the results of that, but I'm not sure where it went. But all I know, it was pushed back even further. So it tells me there's more work to be done in the state of California. And I think that, what we have now with RapidDeploy is it's the game changer in 911. And as far as advice to anybody that's, kind of, holding back on technology because they're worried about, you've got to, you can't just keep running every day. This is the way we've always done it. You got to think outside the box. I mean, my cell phone, I've got an app on there that turns it into a two-way radio system. I live 100 miles from where I work. I could be at home on the weekend, turn that app on, and I could key up and talk on any channel, any talk group in our county over the cellular network over Wi-Fi. And it turns your phone into a two-way radio. And it's amazing. And it has encryption on it and everything. And I also have an app on my phone of our CAD system. So I can actually, have CAD in the palm of my hand on my phone and talk on the radio. And it's technology like that that's bringing 911 into the future. And I think that agencies that are, worried about technology, they need to take small steps at a time, bring it in, see what it could do for them. I mean, they're in agencies that have made the change, reach out to them. It's like when we got this new CAD system. I didn't know nothing about it. I reached out to other agencies I knew had it. And I worked, we spent 13 months building our new CAD system. And was it perfect? By no means, but it's a learning lesson with anything. You have to embrace technology, but there is that fine line. You can't overdo the technology in the comm center. And, at first I was like, hey, we need more technology, more. And one of my managers said, hey, enough technology, you're killing us. I found this website,
yeah.
And I get that, but somebody likes technology. Yeah. You want to try and get everything in there. But if you burden the dispatcher with too much technology, I mean, we're able to track trailers for law enforcement. If someone steals a trailer, we sets off alarm, we're able to track them and tell them where it's at. And it's that technology, and they can also do that with banks with money packs. That technology is out there. You just got to be careful when you're implementing anything and just, take small steps at a time. Don't just jump in. We went from an analog radio system to P25 digital trunking. It was a whole new world for us. And It took us a little bit to get over the hump, but now that over that hump, now you get better understanding how that all works. But then you're restricted with people coming into your county. They can only be on certain talk groups because it's got to have that analog overlay because the radios won't register to our system. That's the only downside.
Dang.
So I think technology is great, and there is a place for the 911. And I think that if this is where we're at today, I can only imagine 10 years from now where we're going to be. Everything's going to be cloud-based, and we're working with RapidDeploy, looking at their cloud-based CAD, not, seeing what their offerings are, because it saves you on all the hardware and the upgrades and, the maintenance costs with IT maintaining servers and, that, server version end of life. Now you got to get another server, and you're talking anywhere $20,000 to $60,000 per server. That's money you got to have in your budget ready to go right then.
Right.
And when it's in the cloud, that's, you don't have to deal with none of that.
So much better, man.
It is. It is. I mean, do you think 10 years ago there'd be such thing as podcasting? It's amazing.
Yeah, it's all of it. Just everything just continues to evolve and evolve and evolve. And the future of 911, I mean, it's looking good. And I'm excited. It's going to be good, man. Thank you so much for being on this episode. It was awesome to learn more about you, how you got into public safety to begin with, your transition, but the fact that you're also still doing it part-time. So that's awesome as well, because you're able to, again, continue to bridge that gap between 911 and any of the technology that comes in, whether it's the current ones technology that you had that is evolving, and then new stuff that's coming in. You're able to continue to bridge that gap. So thank you for the job that you do, and also for being on the show, man. This has been good.
Well, I appreciate your time, and like I said, I firmly believe in what you're doing within the trenches. I am 911 movement. I think you're amazing. Like I said, after seeing you at Calnita, that you had me there, and I was like, I have to be one of the patrons. I got to, because you can't do what you're doing without support from people out there being willing to support you. And I think that you're probably the loudest voice out there for the 911 industry. And I think that you're very well known. I mean, look how many, conferences that you're doing the virtual conferencing for. I think it's amazing. So
thank you, man.
I appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. I will be right back here with you in just a moment. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that is going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. That is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/withinthetrenchespodcast. This episode has been sponsored by InDigital as well as RapidDeploy. And this episode has been a RapidDeploy exclusive episode. The show will always be free, but if you're looking for any bonus content, you can check us out and support us on patreon.com/WTT podcast. And again, a shout out to all the patrons. I appreciate it more than you will ever know. Thank you so very much. And this episode can be seen on Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as YouTube and Twitter. And you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone.